He had so much energy, I let him do whatever he wanted to me. That's the sentence that still echoes in my mind, the one I never thought I would say out loud. If you had met me a year ago, you would have seen a woman who believed in loyalty, in commitment, in the quiet comfort of a stable marriage. I was the kind of person who thought true love meant endurance. I never imagined I would become the main character in a true infidelity story. But sometimes betrayal doesn't begin with hatred. It begins with attention. I was married to Daniel for 8 years. We had built a life that looked perfect from the outside, a cozy home, steady jobs, family dinners on Sundays. People used to tell us we were couple goals. But behind closed doors, things were different. The spark had faded long ago. Conversations turned into routines. Touch became rare. I felt invisible in my own marriage, like I was slowly disappearing. Then he walked into my life. His name was Marcus. He wasn't supposed to mean anything to me. He was just someone I met through work, confident, charismatic, and full of life. The first thing I noticed about him was his energy. It was magnetic. He spoke like every word mattered. He laughed like he didn't care who was watching. And when he looked at me, really looked at me, I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. At first, it was harmless. Just conversations during lunch breaks. A few jokes. Compliments that lingered a little too long. But emotional affairs don't announce themselves. They grow quietly, disguised as friendship. Marcus would ask me questions Daniel hadn't asked in years. Are you happy? What do you really want? When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Those questions shook me. I didn't have answers. I had responsibilities. I had routines. I had a marriage that looked fine on paper. But I didn't feel fine. The attention became addictive. The late-night messages. The way he remembered small details about my day. The way he made me feel young again. I told myself it was innocent. I told myself I deserved to feel alive. That's how every true infidelity story begins, with justification. One evening, after a long week, our group from work decided to grab drinks. Daniel thought nothing of it. Why would he? I had never given him a reason to doubt me. I remember standing in front of the mirror before leaving, staring at my reflection. I hadn't tried this hard in years. That should have been my first warning. The night was loud, full of music and laughter. Marcus was different that evening, more intense, more direct. His energy was overwhelming. He stood close when he talked. His hand brushed mine, and instead of pulling away, I froze. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want him to stop. I kept telling myself I was still in control. But control slips quietly. It doesn't shatter. It fades. When he offered to drive me home, I hesitated. I could have said no. I should have said no. Instead, I got into his car. The silence between us was heavy, charged with everything we hadn't said out loud. My heart was racing, not with fear, but with anticipation, and that scared me more than anything. He told me I deserved more. More passion. More excitement. More than a marriage that felt like a roommate situation. His words hit the exact cracks in my heart. And in that moment, I made the choice that would change everything. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about him. It was about the way he made me feel powerful, wanted, alive. He had so much energy, so much intensity, that I stopped resisting. I let myself drift into something I had spent years judging in other people. I crossed a line I once swore I never would. But here's the truth no one talks about in stories of cheating and betrayal: the thrill is real. The validation feels intoxicating. And that's what makes it dangerous. The next morning, reality hit me like a wave. I woke up in my own bed next to my husband, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work, completely unaware that I had already shattered the foundation of our marriage. Guilt settled in, heavy and suffocating. But so did something else, a craving. Marcus texted me before noon. Just a simple message: I can't stop thinking about you. My stomach flipped. I knew I should end it. I knew I was standing at the edge of something destructive. Emotional infidelity had already turned physical in a way I never imagined for myself. But instead of stepping back, I leaned forward. Because part of me wasn't ready to give up that feeling. That's the part that terrifies me the most. This isn't just a story about cheating. It's a story about loneliness inside a marriage. About the slow erosion of connection. About how easy it is to fall when someone offers you exactly what you've been missing. It's about the dangerous power of attention and the lies we tell ourselves to protect our choices. And just when I thought I could manage both worlds, the stable wife at home and the passionate secret on the side, something happened that I never saw coming. A small mistake. A single notification. One moment that would expose everything. And when Daniel finally looked at me with suspicion in his eyes, I realized the real consequences of my actions were only beginning. What happened next didn't just threaten my marriage. It threatened my identity, my family, and the version of myself I thought I was. If you think this is just another infidelity confession, you're wrong. Because the real betrayal wasn't what I did with Marcus. It was what I discovered about myself after I did it. And that discovery changed everything. And that discovery changed everything. After that morning, I tried to act normal. I packed Daniel's lunch. I answered emails. I folded laundry while the TV played in the background. On the surface, nothing had changed. But inside, I felt like I was living a double life. Every ordinary moment now carried a secret underneath it. The problem with infidelity isn't just the act itself. It's the mental shift. I started noticing the distance between me and my husband more than ever. The silence at dinner felt louder. The way he scrolled on his phone while I talked felt colder. Maybe it had always been like this, but now I was hyper-aware of it. I was comparing everything. Marcus, on the other hand, was intensity. His messages became more frequent, more personal. He'd send a simple "How are you really feeling today?" and somehow it felt deeper than years of conversation at home. He talked about dreams, travel, risks. He made my safe life feel small. But here's what I haven't told you yet, my marriage hadn't always been like this. Daniel and I met when we were young. He was steady, reliable, the kind of man who made promises and kept them. In the beginning, we had passion too. Late-night drives, spontaneous trips, laughter that felt effortless. Over time, responsibilities replaced adventure. Bills, work stress, family expectations. We stopped checking in emotionally. We assumed love would survive without effort. And maybe that's where the real crack began. I started replaying old memories in my head, trying to figure out when I became vulnerable to an emotional affair. Was it the night Daniel forgot our anniversary? Was it when he brushed off my attempt to talk about feeling disconnected? Or was it something inside me, a need for validation I didn't even realize was growing? Marcus sensed that vulnerability. He never pushed directly. That's what made it more dangerous. He would listen, nod, and say things like, "You deserve to feel wanted." Simple words. Powerful words. I began hiding my phone. Turning it face down. Taking it with me into rooms I never used to. Every small action fed the guilt. Every secret added weight. Yet instead of pulling away, I leaned deeper into the connection. The real conflict wasn't just between two men. It was between two versions of myself. The loyal wife who believed in commitment, and the restless woman craving attention and excitement. That internal battle grew stronger every day. And then one evening, Daniel asked a simple question that made my heart stop. "Why do you seem so far away lately?" He said it casually, almost gently. But in his eyes, I saw something new: doubt. And in that moment, I realized the mystery wasn't just whether I would get caught. It was whether I even wanted to stop before everything fell apart. I forced a smile when Daniel asked that question. I told him I was just tired, stressed from work, nothing serious. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. That was the first time I realized emotional cheating doesn't just create distance, it changes your energy. And the person who knows you best can feel it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside me. I could hear his breathing, steady and familiar. For years, that sound had comforted me. Now it felt like a reminder of what I was risking. A stable marriage. A shared history. A man who trusted me without question. The next day, Marcus pulled me aside at work. He could sense something was different. I didn't even have to explain. He just looked at me and said, "He's starting to notice, isn't he?" The way he said it sent a chill through me. Not fear exactly, but awareness. This wasn't just flirtation anymore. This was an affair growing roots. At the same time, another part of my life started shifting. My best friend, Sarah, casually mentioned that she'd seen me laughing with Marcus at a cafe the week before. She didn't accuse me of anything, but her raised eyebrow said enough. Gossip spreads fast. Secrets don't stay small. I began to feel trapped between three worlds: my husband's quiet suspicion, Marcus's increasing intensity, and the outside eyes slowly observing the change in me. Every choice felt heavier. Every message felt riskier. And yet, when Marcus texted me late that night saying he couldn't imagine stepping back now, my heart didn't tell me to run. It told me to hold on tighter. That's when I knew the real conflict wasn't just about being caught. It was about losing control of something that had already started controlling me. The pressure started to show in small cracks. Daniel became quieter, more observant. He would glance at my phone when it buzzed. He asked more questions about my work schedule. Nothing aggressive, nothing dramatic, just subtle shifts that made my chest tighten every time. At work, Marcus was the opposite. He was impatient now. What began as excitement had turned into urgency. He talked about taking a weekend trip, about not hiding anymore, about how exhausting secrets were. His energy, the same energy that once pulled me in, now felt overwhelming. He wanted clarity. He wanted a decision. And I was stuck in the middle. One evening, Daniel surprised me by coming home early. I was in the kitchen, texting Marcus, smiling at something he'd said. I didn't hear the door open. I didn't see Daniel standing there until I looked up and our eyes met. The way his expression shifted, from warm to confused to guarded, happened in seconds. "Who are you texting?" he asked. My mind went blank. I locked the screen too quickly. That one small movement said more than any words could. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse me of cheating. He just watched me. And somehow, that silence was worse than anger. It felt like the beginning of something breaking. Later that night, I stepped outside to clear my head. My phone vibrated again. Marcus. Another message filled with intensity, asking me if I was ready to stop pretending. As I read his words, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Daniel's car keys were missing from the counter. And through the living room window, I saw his car slowly pulling out of the driveway. I didn't know where he was going. But for the first time, I felt the full weight of what this true infidelity story was about to cost me. I stood frozen by the window, watching Daniel's car disappear at the end of the street. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might give me away, even though I was alone. My first instinct was to call him. My second was to hide everything. Instead, I did something worse. I called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. I told him Daniel had left the house unexpectedly, that something felt off. There was a pause on the line, a silence that didn't match his usual confidence. Then he asked a question that made my blood run cold. "Did you delete our messages?" I hadn't. In the chaos of juggling my double life, I'd convinced myself I was being careful. But I hadn't cleared everything. Some conversations were still there: emotional confessions, late-night exchanges, hints strong enough to expose an emotional affair. If Daniel checked my phone records, if he looked closely enough, the truth wouldn't be hard to piece together. Panic settled in. I rushed back inside, scrolling through my phone with shaking hands. As I started deleting messages, I noticed something new. An unfamiliar number had sent me a screenshot, a photo of me and Marcus sitting close together at that cafe from weeks ago. The caption underneath read, "Does your husband know?" My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. Someone else knew. Someone was watching. I tried calling the number. It went straight to voicemail. Another message came in seconds later: "You should tell him before someone else does." My world felt like it was collapsing from every direction. Daniel was gone. Marcus was anxious and pushing for answers. And now there was a third presence, an unknown person who had evidence of my betrayal. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about my marriage falling apart. This could turn into public humiliation. Family, friends, work. Everything I had carefully built could unravel in days. Then my phone buzzed again. It wasn't Marcus. It was Daniel. A single text. "I think we need to talk. I'm not alone." I stared at those words, my mind racing with possibilities. Who was he with? A friend? My best friend Sarah? Or someone who already knew the full story of my infidelity? Whatever was happening, it was bigger than I imagined. And I had the terrifying feeling that the truth was no longer in my control, and my hands were shaking when I texted back, asking Daniel where he was. He sent me a location just 10 minutes away, a quiet parking lot near the park where we used to walk in the early years of our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. The drive there felt endless. Every worst-case scenario played in my head. I imagined him sitting with a lawyer. I imagined Sarah telling him everything. I imagined my entire true infidelity story laid out in front of him, exposed and ugly. When I pulled in, I saw his car. He was standing outside, leaning against it. And he wasn't alone. Marcus's car was parked right beside his. My heart dropped. Daniel looked calm. Too calm. Marcus looked anything but. The confident, high-energy man who once made me feel alive now seemed tense, almost cornered. I stepped out of my car, my legs barely steady. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He simply held up his phone. On the screen were printed phone records, dozens of late-night calls and messages between me and Marcus. Not explicit. But enough. Enough to prove emotional cheating. Enough to shatter trust. "I didn't know for sure," Daniel said quietly. "So I called him." That's when it hit me. Daniel hadn't been reacting out of pure suspicion. He had done his own investigation. He had contacted Marcus directly, asking for the truth. And Marcus, under pressure, had admitted more than I ever expected. Marcus started talking fast, saying he cared about me, that I wasn't happy, that this wasn't just some affair. But as he spoke, something shifted in me. The intensity that once felt exciting now felt selfish. He wasn't fighting for me. He was defending himself. Daniel turned to me. "I don't need details," he said. "I just need the truth. Did you choose him over us?" In that moment, everything became clear. The loneliness, the craving for attention, the thrill of validation, none of it had actually solved anything. I had been running from problems instead of facing them. "I was wrong," I said, my voice breaking. "I let it go too far." Marcus looked stunned. He hadn't expected that answer. Daniel closed his eyes for a second, absorbing it. Then he did something I didn't expect. He handed Marcus his phone. On the screen was the unknown number, the one that had been sending me threats. Daniel had traced it. It belonged to Marcus's girlfriend. The woman he never told me about. Suddenly, the entire affair felt different. I wasn't the only one being lied to. The man whose energy pulled me in had been living his own double life. Daniel looked at me one last time. "We both have decisions to make," he said. Marcus stood there exposed. I stood there ashamed. And Daniel walked back to his car, leaving me in the space between two broken truths, realizing that the biggest betrayal wasn't just what I did to my marriage. It was how easily I believed someone who was betraying me too. Daniel drove away that night, and I didn't chase after him. For the first time since this emotional affair began, I stopped running. I didn't call Marcus either. He tried to speak, tried to explain about the girlfriend he had hidden, about how it wasn't serious, but I couldn't listen anymore. The energy that once felt intoxicating now felt empty. The thrill was gone. All that was left was the damage. I went home alone and sat in the silence of our living room. The same walls that once felt suffocating now felt fragile, like everything inside them had been shaken. I thought about the path that led me here, the loneliness in my marriage, the need for validation, the attention that slowly turned into infidelity. None of it happened overnight. It was built on small choices, small secrets, small lies. Daniel didn't come home that night. He stayed with his brother. We didn't speak until the next evening. When we finally sat across from each other at the kitchen table, there were no dramatic speeches. Just honesty. Raw, uncomfortable honesty. I told him everything, not graphic details, but the truth about how disconnected I had felt. How I let emotional cheating fill a space I should have fought to repair. He admitted he had noticed the distance too, but assumed we would figure it out later. Later never came. We both neglected the marriage in different ways. The biggest question wasn't whether I loved Marcus. I didn't. The real question was whether our marriage could survive betrayal. We decided to try counseling. Not because it would magically erase what happened, but because 8 years deserved more than one mistake. Trust wouldn't return overnight. Healing wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, we were actually talking. As for Marcus, I blocked his number. His girlfriend reached out to me once. There was anger in her message, but also pain. I apologized. Not to ease my guilt, but because she deserved to hear it. This true infidelity story didn't end with fireworks or revenge. It ended with consequences and reflection. I learned that attention is not the same as love. Energy is not the same as commitment. And validation from the wrong person can cost you the right one. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: emotional affairs don't just break trust, they expose what's already broken. And ignoring those cracks will only make them deeper. I don't know what the future holds for my marriage. But I do know this: I will never again trade honesty for excitement. And that's the truth.